Hello, Sunshine. I'm ALEXI LALAS, and welcome to the State of the Union podcast, where we look at the beautiful game on and off the field through the lens of red, white, and blue-colored glasses. All right, so this week we'll be talking about what can only be described as the craziness and the wonderful craziness that is the MLS playoffs. We'll be looking at all the goals and the referee decisions and the shootouts and the mayhem and the chaos that is MLS playoffs. We'll also be doing a European roundup. We'll be talking a little bit of obviously EPL and going on over there, and Ibra, Liverpool, Haaland. We'll be talking about what else? Some Belushi talk and some Hummingbird talk. We'll get to that too. But first, joining me as always, my friend, my colleague, and my guiding light, David Mossey, a soccer savant and a Fox Soccer researcher and writer extraordinaire. Mossey, how are you on this Monday, November 23rd in the year 2020? And before you answer, I would just like to remind everybody of David Mossey's affinity and love and support and steadfastness in terms of that support of the Wolverines of the University of Michigan. Mossey, how are you?
I am doing well. I don't know how many games Michigan is going to win this season, but they won the one game I absolutely needed them to win for my sanity this past weekend.
So your Wolverines of Michigan took on my Scarlet Knights of Exit 9 off the Turnpike over there in Jersey. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong. I get most of my information from Rob Stone, so it could very well be wrong. He could just be telling me stuff. But when the season started, when it came to Rutgers, as is kind of normal, we didn't have great expectations, although when we started off and we beat, Michigan State, everyone thought everything was going to be great. And, we've kind of reverted to the mean and we're still Rutgers, right? So we're a proverbial punching bag, if you will, for some bigger clubs out there, as opposed to Michigan, where there's always an expectation that they're going to be around. That notion was quickly dispelled early on. And so you get up against Rutgers, and once again, even Rutgers in 2020 is a game that you should win. Now, you left it late, but ultimately you got the win. What was interesting to me is the way that your team celebrated as if you had won the Super Bowl. No, you don't win the Super Bowl in college, right? You win whatever the bowl is, some sort of bowl out there, or the Final Four, right? Act like you've been there before, Mossey. I mean, I think that this was embarrassing for not just your football team, but for and I'll say it's a fine institution, for the fine institution that is the University of Michigan. Thoughts on this game, Mossey? Congratulations, by the way, buddy.
Yeah, a week after I mocked Scottish fans for over-celebrating qualifying for the Euros, my school put on an over-celebrating clinic there, because I agree with you. That was maybe the low point in the history of Michigan football, more so even than the defeats this season, is how excited we were about a triple overtime victory over Rutgers. So yeah, no, this season is still a disaster. We may have found a quarterback in Cade McNamara, but it's amazing how quickly the future of Michigan football went from McCaffrey to Milton to now McNamara. There's this kid, JJ McCarthy, coming in next season, who's this 5-star recruit. So he's supposed to be the second coming. Who the heck knows? But he's got to find a quarterback and settle on him for a couple of years, and maybe it'll be McNamara now. We'll see.
Now you're already thinking to next season. I was with Rob Stone this morning. We were getting our COVID testing, and so I always try to pick his brain for the college football stuff that I just don't understand. Now, there's no way in hell that your Wolverines are getting in the top four. That Final Four, right? But you still could go to a bowl, whatever the bowl season does look like in 2020, 2021, right? I mean, you're still holding out hope for a bowl appearance, right?
Well, to answer your first question, no, we will not be in any college football playoff this season. I don't even know how the bowls work this year, to be honest. I haven't read the fine print on it, but I don't know.
So this season's done.
Well,
done.
We have the Ohio State game coming up next month, and Rob Stone is trying to sell me on, hey, maybe you could salvage this whole thing by pulling off a stunner in Columbus that day.
It doesn't solve all the problems, but that would be a nice little Band-Aid for the season, right? I mean, given what Ohio State's in the top four, I think, right? So, all right, well, we got that to look forward to. Who knows?
The expression crazier things have happened. It doesn't apply here. That would literally be the craziest thing that's ever happened if this Michigan team were to go into Columbus and beat Ohio State.
All right, what else, Mossey? What are you watching or listening to out there?
continuing on The Crown season 4, which is just outstanding. As I've told you, we're up to the 80s. So this is the season with Princess Diana and Margaret Thatcher. There was an episode I watched a couple nights ago. I never knew this story, that some random guy snuck into Buckingham Palace and walked right into the Queen's bedroom. Somehow got past all the security. The guy named Michael Fagan, incredible story. Then, the great thing about The Crown is every episode then sends me to Wikipedia, where I do this deep dive to see what's real, what's not. So thoroughly enjoying that.
Hold on. So our prized researcher and analyst and savant when it comes to details and information and facts, when he wants to get to the bottom of things, he goes to Wikipedia. I just want to make sure that we understand that correctly, right?
Well, anybody can post on Wikipedia, so you're getting the best information. Awesome.
I love it.
And then, by the way, that's a little Office reference. I don't know if you're a fan of that show, but and then also continuing to watch The Undoing, which is this HBO show with Hugh Grant and Nicole Kidman. Last night was episode 5 out of 6, and there was something of a twist at the very end, which, to be honest, is one that I was prepared for, because Chris Ryan and Andy Greenwald, who do this terrific pop culture podcast for The Ringer called The Watch, they predicted weeks ago who they thought the killer was actually going to be.
All right, well, don't tell me. It's in my. Don't give it away.
It actually took a little bit of the sting from me out of what was supposed to be this earth-shattering plot twist. But nevertheless, terrific show, and the finale is next Sunday. I can't wait.
Nice. All right, I got 2 things in my list. Did I talk about the Hummingbird Project last week?
I don't recall.
I don't think so. I don't think I did. So it's this movie, came out a couple of years ago. It's not great, but in 2020, we don't care if anything's great. We just want something to take up a couple of hours of your time. And this certainly does. It's about, how do I explain this? It's about high frequency trading and really low latency type of situation when it comes to fiber optic cable. And so look, the faster that you can get information, especially in this information age, the more potential it has to be valuable and the more you can monetize it. And so basically this is a movie about these guys who set about to try to lay fiber optic cable from like Kansas City to New Jersey, which is where the stock market has its technical type of place where everything goes to. All that doesn't, I didn't really explain that very well, but ultimately that cable would enable them to get ahead of everybody else in the matter of milliseconds in terms of getting information. And they would do that in mass and therefore be able to monetize that. And it's about their journey of having to actually lay cable through hundreds and hundreds of miles and going through people's backyard, not through it, but underneath people's backyards, and obviously getting permission and all of that. It's not the greatest movie, but it is really interesting because it obviously brings up this, this question of, how you can find ways to get information faster and in this information age. So I do recommend it just because I think it's interesting. It's not the greatest movie in the world, but like I said, 2 hours out of your time. It stars, what's his name? Jesse Eisenberg. You remember him from the Facebook movie, whatever that was.
Social Network.
Social Network. There you go. So, and then the other one was, so that one's on Netflix. And then the other one is a documentary called Belushi. John Belushi, one of the famous comedians out there. It goes through his life, and that just came on Showtime right now, and it's really interesting in the way that they use interviews and telephone calls from a whole list of celebrities and people and non-celebrities out there to kind of tell this story of this tortured genius who ultimately died early, but tells his story from a young age, and then all through his incredible Hollywood stardom, and just a wonderful talent, but also a very interesting guy, and like a lot of comedians had some real demons and some real problems. And so I definitely do recommend that. That's an interesting one. So those are the 2 things, the 2 things right now. What was the Nicole Kidman one that you said again?
The Undoing.
The Undoing. All right. So I got that. I just wanted to make sure I wrote that one down. And you said it has 1 more episode or 2 more episodes to come, right?
1 more. Yeah.
All right. So I could binge it. I could start it. All right. Enough about our viewing and watching habits. You ready to light this candle?
Yep.
All right, we are going to start right off with the craziness and the beautiful chaos that is the MLS playoffs. I love the MLS playoffs. I love what it brings us, especially now when these are just one-off types of games. And look, I've been around for a long time, so I've seen the ebbs and flows and the ups and downs and the different twists and turns that the MLS playoffs have taken. And it is taken on so many different forms over the years, whether it's home and away or whether it's best of three, and obviously with the different conferences and everything like that. It's come down to these one-off games, which I think puts more emphasis and more pressure, and therefore I think makes them better games. And I'm hard-pressed to find people out there right now, and it's not just about this year, but people right now that are looking and saying that this is not the right way to go. I think that they have hit upon something that's going to last at least for a while right now with these one-off games. It makes what you do in the regular season that much more important, and the benefit that you find out in the playoffs. Right now, most of the, I think we talked about this last week about how much of a home field advantage there was going to be in 20 without most teams not playing without crowds and stuff. And we've seen that the home teams have basically, they almost swept, not completely, but they almost swept in terms of the games up until today. There's still games that are coming tomorrow. We were recording this on a Monday. There's still games that are coming tomorrow. Mossey, where would you like to start when it comes to Major League Soccer? Shall we start over with the play-in round and then go from there?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so the play-in round, this was, two interesting types of games, with Nashville hosting Miami, and we know these are two of the expansion teams. Nashville didn't have a problem. It wasn't with a smoke and a coffee or anything like that. But look, they had no problem dispatching of Miami. Now, having said that, we also know that Miami was without multiple players because of COVID, and so while they beat Miami, they didn't really beat Miami. And look, I know that I'm not saying that you don't deserve it. You play the team that is there. And Nashville, well done. They are a well-oiled machine that understand exactly who they are and aren't. And so they continue on, and they get to face Toronto, a game that actually we will be doing on FS1 on Tuesday. Anything about the Nashville-Miami game, Mossey?
No, I mean, my overall thought on both games, I know you haven't gotten to. Why don't you talk about New England?
Right. Well, so New England, Montreal. That was the game actually we did on Fox. New England left it late, but ultimately New England was playing with all of their designated players for the first time in a long time. And in the playoffs, you need your big players, and your big players are often your designated players to step up, and that's exactly what happened with Carlos Gil and Gustavo Bo. And these types of players making their impact. And ultimately, at the death, New England got the 2-1 victory, and they will go on, and they will actually go to Philadelphia to face Philadelphia in what I guess we're calling round one, because these were the play-in games. All right, anything on the play-in round, Mossey?
Well, that's exactly where I was going to go on DPs. MLS teams, they're spending more money, and they've just gotten smarter about the kinds of DPs they sign. Teams have figured out which kinds of players succeed in this league. And yeah, we made a lot of the fact that it was only the fourth time this season that New England had all three of their DPs, Carlos Gil, Gustavo Bo, and Buxa. And two of them came up huge. Carlos Gil scored a terrific volley in the first half, and then Gustavo Bo with an excellent stoppage time winner. And then Nashville, Randall Leal, who they chartered a plane to get him back from international duty. He scores an absolute whopper of a goal, which sent them on their way. And even I don't want to jump too far ahead to Sunny, but I thought Christian Espinoza, who is San Jose's record signing, was terrific in a losing effort for them. And Alan Pulido didn't play, but we know how good he's been for Sporting KC all season. He's their record signing. So it just shows you throughout the weekend. Reynoso, too, has brought a whole different dimension to Minnesota's attack. So it just shows that these DPs that teams are signing now, they're getting bang for their buck. They're proving to be much better investments. They're really elevating the quality of those teams and, frankly, elevating the quality of the whole league.
I do want to say this before we move away from the play-in round, because it applies to Miami, and I had tweeted this out over the weekend after Miami lost to Nashville, and a lot of people then associated and inferred that I was talking about someone like Nashville. Look, we know that we have quote unquote big clubs, middle-sized clubs, and smaller clubs. Some of them are smaller or middle-sized relative to the market that they are in, and certainly the decisions that they make. And there's some little clubs that act like big clubs, and there's some big clubs that act like little clubs. When it comes to someone like Miami, I do think that it needs to be said that, look, we can make fun of them, and that's kind of human nature, to make fun of when big teams fail, especially if they're not your team. But Major League Soccer, like any league, to be quite honest, they need these big, bold, and I'm going to use the word arrogant teams like Inter Miami. And as I said, I know it's human nature to revel in the failures of these big, bold super clubs. And that's okay. They're the ones that all spend a lot more money than others. But MLS teams that are those big spenders in this league, I think that they are more important to the league's growth than the teams that are frugal and succeed. And it doesn't mean that those teams that are frugal and do succeed don't deserve credit and aren't of value. But ultimately, what's going to drive this? And look, you want it both going on. You want people spending a lot of money and spending it smart, but that doesn't always happen. And I would rather have people with that ambition and with that arrogance spending money and it not working out than the opposite, because I do think that helps drive the league going forward. And so, like a team like Miami, they're going to go back and they're going to lick their wounds and they're going to come back next year. And I hope that they aren't daunted. I hope that they continue to do some big things and think big in terms of the things that they want to do, because that not just makes them better, but it makes the league better. Whether some of those smaller teams want to admit it or not, and guess what? They do admit it privately. It is important. And there are teams that kind of sit on the shoulders and hang on the back of others that do much more. And you're always going to have a spectrum of teams out there. So I just wanted to say that about Miami. All right, Mossey, into round one. You already mentioned the importance of the designated players out there. What games stood out to you? Should we go right to Orlando or what?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, so let's do it. So, all right, Orlando. Okay, Orlando hosting NYCFC. First off, by the way, Mossey, we know that Florida it's a very different type of state, and they do things differently than the rest of the country and the rest of the world. But there were times when I was watching that Orlando game, it was basically like we were playing in 2019, just in kind of normal times, with the amount of people in the stands. Again, people without their shirts, no masks, people singing and throwing and screaming and probably spitting all over the place. Now, it kind of, in one sense, it was great because it provided a little taste of that atmosphere and that normalcy that we've almost forgotten. And it does make such a huge difference. Now, the other side of it is whether it was appropriate and whether there are going to be problems that come out of it. And that's another conversation, but it is part of the conversation. So it was an electric type of environment, even without the stadium full, but there were people there. And this Orlando team that has used 2020 to kind of come out and say, we're not your father's Orlando anymore. We are very, very different. And they ultimately end up going through. Now, that they went through isn't kind of the story. It's how they went through and how this game ultimately ended. Orlando with a red card, so with 10 men for, let's say, the last third of the game, and we're able to take NYCFC into a shootout, and that's where all hell broke loose. That's where the MLS chaos ensued. All right. So you want me to explain this, or you want to explain this?
No, you can go ahead. But
No, you do it. You're good at this.
Look, explain the whole sequence of events. I mean,
yes. I just don't want to miss anything.
The larger issue here, I'm going to assume that anybody listening to this podcast has some general idea of what happened. But the larger issue here is that MLS often straddles this line between good wacky and bad wacky.
Mm-hmm.
And you clearly felt like that was good wacky, because as soon as that game ended, you were firing off tweets. That was awesome.
Yes.
And you were met with a cascade of responses from people saying, no, it wasn't, Alexi. That was embarrassing. Yeah. It damaged the credibility of the league. And that became sort of the prevailing narrative for the next 24 hours or so. And I know that kind of annoyed you a little bit. You on Sunday, you came into work a little bit fuming over that. And so
it just showed again the insecurity and the inferiority complex that we have. And look, I'm not saying that any that any press is good press. I get it. I don't want to go out there and set ourselves apart. I don't want to do things that are going to bring the MLS's image either domestically or internationally, because things are international. I don't want to do things that are going to damage that. I mean, we already, just because we are a North American league, we are going to suffer when people compare and when people look at it. And so anything that you do that is going to reaffirm or confirm their beliefs about the problems we have either on or off the field, I get it. That's not good. But in this instance, and I said this on air the other day, I would have much rathered that what happened, even with the controversy, even with the consternation that this makes us look bad. I would much rather have had Orlando go through in that type of scenario, with that type of spectacle that, by the way, did go viral and was picked up all over the world, than just a ho-hum type of win that went on that really nobody took any notice. And so maybe I am saying in that moment that any press is good press, and even the risk of looking bad because of the decisions that were made. And what we're talking about, obviously, is the referee decisions and the inability to have the laws at their disposal and at their fingertips. Ultimately, they got it right. Okay. Everything was done correctly. Ultimately, it's just how they got there. And it should be mentioned that our own Dr. Joe broke on our air that this referee crew will not be involved in anything going forward when it comes to Major League Soccer. So there are repercussions, there are consequences to this failure and to their actions and to their, I guess it's mistakes, even though ultimately a mistake wasn't made, but a mistake was made in the way that they handled the situation, and that is important. And I get that. I also understand that these are human beings, okay? And they ultimately got the decision wrong, but the way that they went about doing it was not a good look for the professional referee association that we have out there, or obviously Major League Soccer. And so there are going to be these types of effects that happen. But having said that, the drama and the theater and the debate and the interest that it generated in this game, I would much rather have that. I enjoyed it. Did you not enjoy it?
No, I did. I understand where you're coming from. I think we should separate things, because the Galaci stuff, they got right, and in a relatively prompt fashion. Now, you can quibble with the rule. You can question, why is MLS still operating under the old laws of the game? But letter of the law, they got that right. So to me, no issues there. Where the problems began was, first off, allowing the substitution to be made with the backup goalkeeper. He warms up, he gets in goal, the kicker comes up, is seconds away from taking it, and then they realize, actually this substitution wasn't allowed, and we have to undo this. That was bad. And then, but okay, they figured that out in time and they corrected that. The really, really bad part for me was the referee clearly losing track of the shootout and everybody acting like Orlando had won before they did. That was kind of embarrassing for the league. And it wasn't just the referees, it was the players, it was the announcers on Unimaz. So, I mean, by the way,
your embarrassment, okay, for the league, and I know I'm inferring things here, but it's because you think that this couldn't possibly happen someplace else. You think that because the United States and Canada aren't soccer first type of countries and cultures, that this couldn't possibly happen. There couldn't possibly be referees out there who lose track of the amount of kicks that have been taken. And that's where I have an issue. By the way, I should clarify that this referee crew will not referee any of the games, further games in this season. Doesn't mean they're not eligible, but they're going to get punished, and that's fine. And I think that that's fair and acceptable for them to face the consequences of what they created in that moment. But my point is that a lot of people associated this and put this up on a pedestal to portray something that either they very overtly say, or they just hide. And now this is the opportunity for them to say that this perfectly embodies why the United States and Canada and our soccer culture, isn't as good as the rest of the world, that we could possibly have something like this happening. You're not saying that this couldn't happen anywhere else, are you?
No, it could happen elsewhere. Now, one guy who did get it right, I was told, was Ian Joy on the Yes Network, who right away, as Orlando is jumping up and down celebrating, he's saying, I don't know what they're celebrating for. Their shootout is not over. So kudos to our former colleague who showed again why he's one of the best in the business. He kept his cool in that chaos and was completely on top of it.
So, but what I don't understand is, what if you're a referee, and before the final kick is taken, the team goes and celebrates, and they went running around, Schlegel in goal, the field player went in goal and made the save, and they're screaming and yelling and all that kind of stuff. What would you like that referee to do?
Well, I mean, his body language and actions led everybody to believe he was confused about it too and thought the shootout was over. And then somebody buzzed him and said, no, it's not. That wasn't your interpretation of the events?
I did not see his body language and actions. And I don't think that anybody on Orlando was looking at the body language and actions of the referee. Now, would I have liked it and would have been like a mic drop moment for the referee crew just to stand there and not do anything? But that doesn't stop the other team from celebrating. And by the way, we are all watching this from whatever pictures we are given by television. And that's why those of us on television, we kind of get to write the story the way that we see it and ultimately the way that we want it. And it doesn't necessarily tell the full story when it comes to something like this. But look, I know there are people listening to this right now that say, no, that was bad, Alexi. And how can you possibly defend that? Well, I just explained to you why I think it's okay. Now, it's not something that you want. It's not something that you want to happen on a continual basis. But I enjoy the theater and I enjoy the entertainment of something like this. It's also not something that you go about and proactively try to manufacture. And this was organic. This game is now historic. This game is now historic because of the goalkeeper, the field player going in and saving it. They're selling his jersey now online. But this game is also historic because of all of that drama and all of that color and flavor, and good and bad. That's all part of it. And there will many, many years from now that you will remember that game. And lots of people will remember that game. And many, many more will remember that game because of ultimately what happened. So I just don't think that it's as big a deal as other people do. And as I said before,
in conclusion, you subscribe to the easy philosophy. Any publicity is good publicity.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about any publicity, but what happened here, I don't look at it as detrimental, as detrimental as a lot of people do out there. MLS is going to be fine. You're not changing anybody's mind. There's nobody that was an MLS fan that saw this and now is so disgusted that they're not going to continue to follow. And more importantly, I guess, I don't think that there's anybody that was a potential MLS fan that now saw this and it confirmed their suspicions, and now there's no possible way that they could follow a league that allows something like this to happen. All right, enough of that game, but also congratulations to Orlando. They go through against NYCFC and they continue this run and this beautiful run that is 2020. And to any of the referees that are listening out there, you are humans and you all recognize that your job comes with a level of scrutiny, and it comes with consequences to the actions that you take. And just like, I know like a goalkeeper, you may have the best game ever, but you will ultimately judged on that one error or what is perceived as an error. And that, it comes with the territory. You got to have a really thick skin to be a referee. This referee crew will be better because of this when they do ultimately come back, if they do ultimately come back next season. And they're going to take their medicine now, and they understand exactly why they're being punished, I guess it is. But they are human beings. And until we have robots refereeing, which maybe isn't too far around the corner, we are going to get humans that will act humanly and will be fallible and will make mistakes, and maybe we'll lose track of the count when it comes to a shootout. All right, Mossey, other games that piqued your interest?
Well, the game we did yesterday was absolutely phenomenal. Sporting KC San Jose. It featured my favorite goal of the playoffs so far, which was the SKC go-ahead goal. That little backheel flick from Shelton to Buzio was absolutely genius. But then San Jose come back. Last play of the game, Wondolowski gets an equalizer. There was some refereeing controversy there. Did you think 7 minutes of stoppage time was too many? He had initially indicated 4, and then SKC scored their goal. They did a lot of celebrating. They did a little bit of time wasting after that, and so he felt compelled to tack on another 3 more minutes after that. Did you have an issue with that?
I almost will never, ever criticize a referee because they add too much time. I mean, look, if I'm playing, obviously I'm going to criticize it, but just watching a game, because I always was of the opinion that not enough time was added, and that the amount of time that is wasted in the game, if you actually added it all up, would be so much more than what we normally see. So I had no problem at all with the referee in terms of the time that was added. And like you said, it was drama. You think in one instance that 17-year-old Buzio has won the game for Sporty KC, and he's going to ride off into the sunset. But you know what? Legends are legends for a reason, and Chris Wondolowski is that legend. And I said on air the other day that he's a legend not just for the goals that he scores, but for the person that he is on and off the field. Incredible competitor, not the strongest guy, certainly not the fastest guy, but absolutely one of the deadliest finishers we have ever seen in this league, which is why he is the MLS's all-time leading goal scorer when it comes to MLS games. And he finds a way at the end. You're not marking him in the box, and in that final minute of the added time, he finds a way to put it in, and we're 3-3, and we're going to 2-15s. Now, Mossey, are you like me that do you get excited now for these extra times that we play? I feel like if we get 90 minutes, I don't need the extra 30 minutes, to be quite honest with you. I kind of want to get to the drama and the theater of the penalties. And skip that 15 minutes. So when I'm watching that 15 minutes, unless I have a vested interest in the team, I don't want either team to score, or if they or both of them can score, because I kind of want that ending of the penalties at that point.
Interesting. So were you a fan of the golden goal and the silver goal and all that, or?
I was a fan of the golden goal. Silver goal, no. I like the sudden death aspect of something like that, but the 2-15s, it's just get me to that end now. And it's much more from an entertainment perspective that I want the penalties. I feel a little let down when somebody scores and then wins within that 30 minutes of play. You're not like me, though.
It's funny. I asked a trivia question in the control room this weekend. What's the only silver goal that's ever been scored at a major international tournament and nobody could get it? It was Greece against the Czech Republic in the Euro 2004 semifinals. But nevertheless, do you remember the 2014 World Cup quarterfinals in Brazil, what Louis van Gaal did, bringing on Tim Krul in the 120th minute for him to be in goal for a shootout against Costa Rica, and then he ended up making saves, and they won the shootout. Do you remember all that?
Yes.
I bring that up because I've seen this suggested in the last 12 hours, and it sounds crazy, but maybe it's not. If the U.S. Does qualify for the 2022 World Cup, or really any major international tournament that they play, do you think they should consider bringing Tim Melia as a third-string goalkeeper just to have in case any of their matches go to penalties, and you can do what Louis van Gaal did in that instance? Do you think he's that good where it's worth using that roster spot on a guy who's just a shootout specialist for that situation?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. Yeah, he is. He is a penalty specialist, but he's a penalty specialist obviously because of his track record, which is ridiculous. And if you didn't watch the game, ultimately when it went to penalties, he stopped 3 in a row. They didn't even have to get to 5. All right, he stopped the first 3 that San Jose shot, and he is the penalty whisperer. And I don't know how he does it. My problem would be, or my concern would be, is this a guy just on an incredible streak and on an incredible roll? And as soon as you actually try to harness that, if a guy's or a girl's winning at a table, as soon as you try to do anything and change that scenario up, immediately they're going to go cold. I mean, that's
the
that's
sample
what I worry
size
about.
now is pretty legit. I don't know if this is a good streak he's on. I mean, this is like years and years, several shootouts.
Okay. Then to your point, yes, I would have no problem if that's. I mean, that would be amazing, going to a World Cup as the penalty specialist. That's all you're there for. And look, it's not as if he can't save the ball. He actually he made an incredible save on Chris Wondolowski that kept his team in the game, and then enabled them to go. I mean, it's just, he is a very, very good goalkeeper. Yes. To answer your question, yes, I think that would be something to consider, given the fact that at some point in a World Cup, it might be the difference between going on and going home. And if you have somebody that is obviously has a track record and good at it, yeah, I'd want him there.
And by the way, I couldn't agree with you more on the stoppage time. I think we get so used to referees underdoing it that when a referee actually does it correctly, it feels like too much. But really, if you add up all the goal celebrations, the substitutions, the injuries, the time wasting, VAR reviews and whatnot, I mean, you could definitely find 7 minutes in that second half. That was not a stretch to me at all. And you're right. I mean, generally, I kind of think that referees underdo it on the stoppage time front. So no issues with me on that front.
All right. So, but ultimately, this all ends up with Sporting KC, the number 1 seed, going through against the number 8 seed, San Jose. San Jose, I guess, can look at this as a successful season. Matias Almeida continues to be just a professor, maybe a crazy professor. You never know. That the chaotic and the chaos type of play that his team has ascribed to. Okay. I mean, we'll see how long that lasts. But it was fun, and I do think it was ultimately a successful season for them. We will find out if Wondolowski is truly coming back or not. We got some word at the end of the game yesterday. Peter Vermes, who we interviewed after the game, mentioned that he was coming back for a year. We have not been able to confirm that yet. But look, I mean, I hope we get another year. Hope we get multiple years. From a physical perspective, he's good. We've seen he still scores goals. I don't know what the appetite is for the San Jose Earthquakes. They might be looking, and this is this interesting case when you have a player who is aging, and you kind of, in a strange way, as much as you love and respect him, you kind of want to move on, but you can't force him out the door. And it kind of has to come from him or her. And they may begrudgingly say, okay, another year, but it only defers that down the line. Columbus took care of the Red Bulls without a problem, and they move on. And then on the other side, the Loons, speaking of not a problem, took care of Colorado. Although it was a strange game. Colorado, I mean, if I look at that game, Colorado could have legit scored 4 goals on the Loons, and yet they end up scoring none, and Minnesota cruises on through. So congratulations to them. Anything on those before we move on, Mossey?
No, very impressive for the Loons, who are always feeling under-respected. So maybe they'll get some respect with this result.
Yeah, maybe not. Maybe not. Okay, so we are doing this week Toronto against Nashville. We actually just got off the phone with one Josie Altidore. We just did an interview with him, so we'll see if Josie Altidore is on the phone or is on the field. Excuse me, which certainly would bolster TFC. And when I say TFC, Toronto FC, keep in mind that they continue to be playing all of their games in the United States in Connecticut at Rentschler Stadium there in New Haven, right? Is that where it is?
East Hartford, Connecticut.
Hartford, sorry. Hey, Hartford, New Haven. Sorry, at East Hartford over there. So if Toronto FC were to win MLS Cup this year, they would actually be playing it in, potentially be playing it in, no, if they were to go through, they would play it actually in Connecticut. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll talk about all of this because, as we said, there's plenty of games coming on in the weekdays here, and then through the weekend when it comes to MLS playoffs, and we will talk about all of that action. All right, Mossey, anything else?
Yes, one more thing.
Sure.
Stu Holden is a shameless individual.
Uh-oh.
You guys did a segment several weeks back in which you identified your contenders and pretenders for this season. And Stu had Portland as a pretender, and we all questioned him on that. And he's been puffing his chest out in the last 12 hours about the fact that he was right and we were all wrong. And Portland did end up being a pretender, but to not recognize that it was all injury related. I'm sorry, but they won the MLS's back tournament. And when they had Blanco healthy and Niasgoda, they were clearly one of the best teams in the league that would have been primed for a deep run in the postseason. And so, I mean, Stu Holden to be claiming victory on something like that when it was clearly just down to injuries. But yeah, terrible luck for Portland, because when they had all their horses this season, like I said, I thought they were one of the best teams, and I wish they could have gone into the playoffs with Blanco and company healthy, because they would have been a tough team to stop.
Did you just mention MLS is back? Like what did that?
Hey, Portland comes out of the season with some silverware. I mean, do you give more value to MLS is back or the Supporter Shield?
Supporter Shield. Yeah, definitely Supporter Shield. No, I mean, nobody, MLS is back. I totally forgot about MLS is back. Nobody remembers MLS is back. Come on. It was fun in the moment, and then we've moved on. But Portland, you're not Portland, you're not about MLS is back. You're about MLS Cups. Stop it. Yeah, but yeah, don't worry about it. I know that they didn't have a lot of their players, and neither did Miami. And look, we when I talk about we, I mean like Stu and myself, we make predictions. Some of them work out, some of them don't. All right. If you're afraid to be wrong, this is not the business for you. And inevitably people will remember the ones that you got wrong. So Stu, you're not going to get any, I guess if you want it, credit for picking Dallas over Portland, which by the way, I also did too. You know, so just let it go, whatever, and we'll move on. I got plenty of picks wrong also when it comes to the MLS playoffs, and I will continue to do so. That's the way it goes. This is the most unpredictable league in the world. Doesn't matter how long you've been following it or not. And again, we are seeing that. All right, we're going to take a real quick break, and when we come back, we'll do our European Roundup. We will be right back. Moving on. All right, welcome back. Time for our European Roundup here. All sorts of stuff happened over in Europe, Mossey. Where do you want to start? I want to get through this, and I want to give time to a lot of the big stories. We're not going to go through every single event and every single game out there, but there were some big results and some big plays from some big players here. So, should we start over in England?
Sure.
All right. Poor little engine that could. The poor little team that is Liverpool, with all of their injuries and their woes, and gosh, this is just such a difficult year for Klopp and company, and no Salah and no Van Dijk and no Gomez and no Henderson and stuff like that. And they got to go and play Leicester, and they don't miss a beat. They do not miss a beat. They go and they smack them. 3-0, right? Milner at right back. And I mean, it doesn't matter what Klopp throws out there. Somehow you put on that red, you step on that field, and automatically you as an individual are elevated to levels unseen. And as a team, you rise above, because that's what LFC is all about. Right, Mossey?
Well, yeah, you rattled off some impressive names there. They're out, and you left out Alexander-Arnold and Thiago. So it is quite the injury list they have. And I did think it was very impressive that they dusted off Leicester the way they did, both Jota and Firmino on the score sheet. So I know you're dripping with sarcasm there, but I do give Klopp credit. I mean, he's built such a winning culture there that they can just shuffle players in and out. And that one bizarre loss to Villa notwithstanding, they continue to churn out the results this season. They're level on points atop the league with Tottenham, who had a massive win this weekend.
Well, I mean, I only am a little flip and being a little facetious in that there seems to be a notion out there that that Liverpool isn't a super club, either in terms of the amount of money that they spend, the talent that they have, the size of their club, and that somehow they should be treated right now as a middle type of club that is punching above their weight. And so that's the only thing that I may push back on when it comes to folks out there. But congratulations to Liverpool. Other notable results when it comes to EPL, Mossey, you want to talk about?
No. So as I just mentioned, Tottenham beat Manchester City 2-0 in what was the latest chapter of the managerial rivalry between Pep and Mourinho, which before Klopp crashed the party in recent years, Pep Mourinho was the Messi and Ronaldo of managers. So it's always fascinating to see them go head to head. And, I've been thinking about this a lot lately with Pep and trying to make sense of his Champions League failures. There are some coaches that are just better at the macro than the micro. And when I say macro, it's implementing an overall philosophy and identity and getting a team to play good football on a consistent basis, which inexorably leads to a lot of wins. But as far as coming up with that game plan for that specific opponent on that day, they're not as good at that stuff. And Pep, I think, is an example of that. And that's Mourinho's great gift, by the way. Even in the worst of times for him the last few years, he still had this unique ability on any given day to come up with a smart game plan to get a result. And by the way, Jose Mourinho is back. I mean, this has got to be very satisfying for him because he's been kind of out of the picture the last couple of years. It's been all about Pep and Klopp and Zidane and guys like that. But he's got a really good team here. They're level on points with Liverpool, top league, actually ahead on goal difference and firing on all cylinders. And they look like a team that's going to be there until the end. And so Jose Mourinho kind of back in the picture here, which I know you're a fan of his. So you're probably happy to see that.
I love him. I just love, I love the personality. I love the talent, but I love that he wears his heart on his sleeve. I think that he is a master manipulator, and I look at that as a positive. I think he's also a master motivator. I think, at a time when there were a lot of people accusing him of letting the game pass him by, this is a moment. But we also know that he can snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory. And it can turn south very quickly. I'm not sure that that's going to happen right now, but it's fun to see. It's fun to see a Mourinho strut and puff out his chest again.
And I'll tell you, to hop back to Pep for a second, I'm talking every week on this podcast about how year 5, that might be too many and it's gotten stale. And lo and behold, he signs a 2-year contract extension, which surprised me. Now, some people are connecting the dots there and saying he must have been given assurances that Messi is coming. But then you see other reports that say that City are kind of cooling on the whole Messi thing because of his age. And do we want to pay this massive contract for a guy at that point of his career? So with or without Messi, Pep's going to have to get a second win there because I do think it's gotten a bit stale. That initial excitement that he brought there is kind of worn off. And if he's going to stay there another 2 more seasons beyond this one, he's got to kind of get things sort of going again. And yeah, because right now, I don't think this season is going to be all that successful for him. I don't like the feel of that team. So that was interesting that he signed a contract extension there for another 2 years.
All right. Anything else England-wise?
No, that's it.
Okay. Did you... Who got the red card? The headbutt? Did you see the headbutt from Pepe? Was it Pepe that did it? Nicholas Pepe?
Yeah. I mean, we can spend a second on that. Arsenal.
I just, when there's a headbutt, I think you should always, in any podcasting situation, if there's a headbutt, I think it has to be.
Well, not even just a headbutt, but just Arsenal in general. I mean, 1 goal in the last 5 Premier League games are languishing in the bottom half of the table. Arteta, he's had this ability to pull off a nice result against another one of the big six teams every now and then to sort of preserve some notion that he's building something there. He had to win away to United recently, an example of that. But just overall, they're not playing great football. They don't score a lot of goals. And so I don't know. To me, the jury is still way out on him.
Was it a red card?
Yes, I do think so.
Do you think it was embellishment? What's the natural reaction for a human being when somebody hits their head into your brow?
Back,
I don't know.
Of course.
All right. Let's move on. How about we go over to let's go over to Germany. All right. And the Erling Haaland show continues to roll on. Dortmund 5-2 away at Hertha. He gets his 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th goal, I think. 4-goal performance, and he was subbed out of the game. And by the way, subbed out for
I was gonna say that's almost the bigger story.
Moukoko, 16 years old, gets his debut. Now, why is it such a big story? I mean, isn't this what Dortmund does? I don't understand why this is such a big story.
Wow, but this kid is starting extra young. He in fact this past weekend became the youngest player in Bundesliga history, surpassing another former Dortmund player, Nuri Sahin, who did it. And the interesting thing there is the Bundesliga, the rules used to be that you had to be 16 and a half years of age to be eligible to play in a Bundesliga game. And they lowered that to 16 years of age. And a lot of people think it was specifically for this kid. It's been called the Moukoko rule to enable this kid, because even the Bundesliga officials think they have the next big star in world football in their hands. So they want to get him on the field as quickly as possible. And boy, Dortmund are really leaning into this. There's no sense of being patient. Let's not contribute to the hype here, because he turned 16, Alexi, on Friday, the day before the game. And the next day, they put him in the squad and brought him into a game in the Bundesliga. So it leads you to believe that if it hadn't been for those restrictions, he would have been playing a long time ago. They think he's more than ready. And, it's interesting. I don't want to give one of our arch competitors too much attention here, but Grant Wall just released a podcast documentary about Freddie Adu, and so it sort of dovetails nicely with this kid breaking through now, because people are seeing some parallels. So it's kind of interesting.
Do you think that this would be happening if it wasn't 2020? Like, do you think that it's I mean, look, as I said before, Dortmund, it's not as if they haven't played young players. This is something that they do, as does Germany in general, much more so than the rest of the world. But is it easier to introduce a young player in this sterile, stark, less foreboding type of environment that we live in right now and play in right now?
Maybe, but I've been hearing about this kid for a while. They seem super high on him, and I think they were going to get him on the field fairly quickly, regardless of the circumstances. It is funny at Dortmund how there's always the next young player right around the corner that makes the other ones seem old by comparison. I mean, like Haaland and Sancho are like veterans in that squad. Even somebody like Gio Reyna, who just turned 18, he feels like something of an elder statesman now relative to this kid, and he's going to serve as something of a mentor to the 16-year-old kid. So it's kind of funny with Dortmund. But I mean, we shouldn't forget about Haaland. I mean, Dortmund were actually trailing this game at the half, and then he explodes for 4 goals in the second half. The 2 Hertha goals, by the way, both by my boy Matheus Cunha, who's having a very nice season. I think he's probably the 3rd best striker in the Bundesliga right now, behind Lewandowski and Haaland. But so Dortmund get a nice result on a weekend in which Bayern dropped points, which is a rarity. So good combination of results.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mossey, if I at the age of 18 was ever asked to mentor anybody younger than me, it would have been a complete and utter disaster for whoever that poor person was. But it is amazing. It is amazing. Well, congratulations to him. And Aaron, Haaland is just phenomenal. And
on Moukoko, just to address the elephant in the room, there is some skepticism about this kid's age, which often accompanies these sorts of things. Germany actually didn't play him at youth level for many years. They claim it was because they didn't want to contribute to all the media hype, but a lot of people think the reason is they were a little bit skeptical and didn't want to risk fielding him in some youth tournament and getting in trouble if it was later uncovered that he wasn't as young as he claims he is. So it's an unfortunate part of the story. And listen, until I see any proof, I'm going to believe what he's saying, what everybody's saying about how old he is. But if you go on Twitter, I mean, any sort of reference to this kid is invariably met with tons of snarky comments from people being like, yeah, right, 16 years of age. So,
All right, Mossey, here's the question for you. And this is going to dovetail into Serie A. If you can only have Erling Haaland or Zlatan Ibrahimovic? Who would you have? We're going to play one game. You're going to play one game right now.
Whew.
Yeah.
That's a good one. If I had to go play a game tomorrow, I honestly, I think I would pick Haaland. I think I've already seen
damn. All right. Well, listen, it wasn't 4 goals, but it was 2 goals. Milan go into Napoli, and Milan haven't won in Napoli in years. I was reading. Zlatan has scored in his first 6 league games, got 2 of the 3. They end up winning 3-1 away. The man is on fire. He is as hot and as deadly as he has ever been, and leading AC Milan and leading Serie A. But you'd still take Haaland. All right. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I mean, the story in Italy this season has been, in my view, of 3 different goal scorers: Zlatan, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Romelu Lukaku, and all 3 had braces this weekend. Zlatan, as you mentioned, scored twice in AC Milan's win over Napoli. Ronaldo scored both goals in Juve's 2-0 win over Cagliari, and Lukaku scored twice in Inter's 4-2 win over Torino. They are the top 3 in the scoring charts right now. And when the dust settles, these might be the 3 top teams in Serie A in some order: Juve, Inter, and AC Milan. I know right now you look at the table and Sassuolo's up there, and Roma, who are actually playing better than I expected. But I think eventually this might set up where you have the 3 leading scorers on the 3 leading teams, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, because week in, week out, these 3 guys are just doing amazing things finding the back of the net.
Okay, let's quickly go over to France. Let's go to first good PSG, and then we'll go to bad PSG. The good PSG is that PSG, PSG beat Lyon in the first division, the feminine first division, giving Lyon's their first league loss since 2016. I mean, that is like that's like UConn basketball-esque type of success, right? So congratulations to PSG when it comes to the women's team. Now, when it comes to the men's team, 10 men PSG losing to Monaco. They still have a 2-point cushion ahead of Lille right now, but not a good loss, especially because they were up 2-0 and then they let Monaco storm back. Did I see a Cesc Fabregas sighting? Is that what I saw? I know he scored a penalty when I was watching some of the highlights there, but not a good look for PSG when it comes to the men's team.
Fabregas had a really good game, actually. PSG were up 2-0 at the half. Mbappe with both goals, and then Kevin Volland scored twice to equalize, and Fabregas got the winner from the penalty spot. Very nice win for Niko Kovac, who's off to a pretty good start there on the Monaco bench. And more trouble for Tuchel, who's very much in the hot seat. Terrible result for PSG. Mbappe started this game. Neymar came on in the second half for the last 30 minutes. Tuchel has already said he's going to start the Champions League game they have coming up, which we'll get to in a minute. But PSG, I keep saying they really haven't gotten going yet this season. They're still kind of all over the place, and this is another example of it. All
right, well, you mentioned it real quick.
You skipped over maybe the biggest story of the weekend from a domestic standpoint. I mean,
what did I say?
You also skipped over Josh Sargent getting an assist against Bayern, but I wasn't going to quibble with that. But I don't know if we can blow off La Liga altogether.
Oh, did I miss La Liga? God.
That's all right. No, let's roll with it. That's not
what happened in La Liga. All right, Barcelona's not as good as they should be, and Real Madrid's faltering, and somebody's gonna, at least for the next couple of months, say that they're gonna win the league, and yet when it all comes right down to it, it's either gonna be Barcelona or Real Madrid. Yes or no?
I think no, perhaps this season.
Okay.
Atletico Madrid beat Barcelona 1-0. Carrasco with the goal, and you see that Atletico 1-0 win, and you think it's a typical Simeone. They must have grounded out the result, but that's not what happened here. They were actually on the front foot for a lot of this game and could have won by more. They're playing some really nice football right now. João Felix being the catalyst. They didn't even have Suarez for this game. He's still recovering from COVID, but when he's in there, he makes them even more explosive. So this is a slightly different Atletico team. I really like the way they're playing, and I don't think Barcelona or Real Madrid are that good. So this is a season where I could definitely see Atletico Madrid winning La Liga. And from the Barcelona perspective, I mean, it is just an absolute mess. They've claimed just 11 of a possible 24 points. They're mid-table, and the Messi situation. Did you see his comments getting off the plane? I mean,
when he came back,
the context of it, to be fair, the guy had just been on a 15-hour flight from Buenos Aires back to Barcelona after.
He had to fly all the way across in a nice, comfy plane and seat, and then he had to actually talk when he landed at the airport.
As soon as the plane lands, these tax officials get on the plane and grill him for another hour about tax stuff while his wife and kids are waiting in the car to pick him up. So after all that, he finally gets off the plane. He gets swarmed by reporters who shove microphones in his face and start asking about comments that Antoine Griezmann's entourage have been making the last couple of weeks. Griezmann's brother and former agent have both popped off and said that Messi has too much power at Barcelona and they don't like the way Messi treats Griezmann and yada, yada. And so Messi, in the midst of all that, kind of, exploded and was like, you know what? I'm sick of being blamed for all the problems at Barcelona. And so, it just, look, we talked about this going into the season, and a few months later, it just seems like the situation hasn't gotten better at all. That his mind is just not there. And I tell you, it's manifesting itself on the field. I know it's sacrilege to say this, but he has not been that great this season. He's converting a lot of penalties, which is dressing up his goal scoring stats, and he's still capable of playing like a killer pass. His vision and passing is still incredible, but just his overall influence in the game, he doesn't seem as explosive anymore. He's kind of waffling about, and body language isn't good. And so, and he wasn't very good this week. And then they lose to Atletico. They've already lost to Real Madrid this season. And so, I don't know. What do you make of this? We talked about Pep signing a 2-year extension and people connecting those dots. Are you to a point? You and I have both felt all along better chance still of him re-signing, staying with Barcelona. Are you moving away from that a little bit now, starting to think there's a better chance than not of him leaving?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if it continues on like you're describing it. I have very little sympathy for the fact that people are asking him questions. This has been his life, so there's a little small violin for that. But when it comes to what he is giving or not giving on the field, if he's not doing what he's being paid to do, then he's cheating his employer and he's cheating his fan base, and he's cheating the club and himself. What he may perceive as injustice, or he may perceive as chaos, or what he may perceive as disparaging comments, or a situation that is oppressive to him, he may need some perspective. He may need some understanding about how most, if not 99.99999% of the world would love nothing more than to be in his position. But once again, he lives, and he will continue to live, and has lived most of his entire life in a bubble that will not probably ever be punctured. And so,
and by the way, a great note from our colleague Jeff Hernandez, who's a name you're going to become very acquainted with in the coming weeks. Messi has been left out of the squad for their Champions League game against Dynamo Kiev. So I think Ronald Koeman feels like he needs to clear his head a little bit, maybe take a few days off here. So they've left him out of the squad. The other bad Barcelona news to come out of this game is Piqué had a serious injury and is going to be out several months. So they're very short at the back now. This season is just falling.
Can he in January sign a pre-contract?
I believe so.
Messi,
yeah.
Right? You can do it 6 months ahead. So in theory, if that's when he's out, we could know in January whether he's going. We won't necessarily know whether he's staying, because theoretically he could still stay. All right. Well, I hope Messi's going to be okay, Mossey. I hope he's going to be okay. I think he is going to be okay. Anything else, Mossey?
Yeah, and just whip very quickly.
Oh, Champions League. Yes. Whip around. What do you see?
A slew of teams this week could clinch knockout stage spots. The two games I have my eye on are Tuesday, PSG hosts Leipzig. It's a virtual must-win for PSG, and preferably by a result that gives them the head-to-head over Leipzig. They lost 2-1 in Germany match day 3. As I said earlier, Mbappe and Neymar will both start that game. Still not sure about Verratti. And then on Wednesday, you have Inter Milan hosting Real Madrid at the San Siro. Real Madrid with all sorts of problems. Sergio Ramos is out, and Benzema and Casemiro are likely out, so their whole spine there could be missing for that game, which is why I expect Inter to win that one. But those to me would be the two biggest games to look for Champions League-wise this week.
All right. We're going to take another little break here, And when we come back, we will have our Ask Alexi segment with those questions, comments, and concerns that you have sent in to us with that hashtag Ask Alexi. So don't go away. Moving on. All right, we're back. Time for Ask Alexi. Use that hashtag Ask Alexi out there on all the social media platforms, and you send us in your comments, questions, and concerns, and we pick a few each week, as we did this week. Mossey, what do the folks want to know?
First up, at Spitzo Matic, Jurgen Klinsmann for Atlanta. Would you hire him?
Interesting. So, my biggest concern with Jurgen Klinsmann as a coach, manager, is that I always felt that his forte and his strength was much better suited to big picture type of stuff, long-term type of stuff, aspirational type of stuff, as opposed to the nitty gritty nuts and bolts type of day in and day out type of stuff that a manager and a coach have, or a more traditional manager and coach. So probably not. I don't think so. I mean, and so by the way, that type of description that I just made lends itself much more to a technical director type of position. And, taking a step back and looking at it big picture. And so, yeah, I don't think that. And I also think that when it comes to Atlanta, I think they go back to that well, and that well that is South America. And it served them well. I think it resonated with the community. It resonated in terms of the style of play. And obviously, it resulted in some great success. And so I think that they look and say, we need somebody that is going to be able to recruit, somebody that is going to be appealing to potential players that are coming, especially those players from South America. So yeah, I just don't think that he checks boxes for what Atlanta is, or Atlanta wants to be, or what Atlanta wants to, I guess, return to be right now when it comes to them hiring a coach. And who was it? You were talking earlier in the pod about somebody. Was it Mourinho that you were talking about? That some coaches have just a better grasp on
Pep. I say he's better at the macro, not the micro.
Exactly, micro. There you go. Exactly. So I think that Jurgen Klinsmann can be very good when it comes to a macro perspective, and I think he can cause a lot of problems when he gets into the micro.
Next up, at Day09, what is your opinion of the FIFA rankings? Do they matter? Does anyone pay attention to it?
You pay attention to them when they benefit you, and you don't pay attention. You don't pay attention to them when you don't look good. So, I mean, that's basically it. And for those that don't know, the FIFA rankings, they are important because they can put you different places in tournaments and seed you and do all that. But there is there's a calculation that ultimately spits out this this list. And that's why oftentimes you will see teams, and it's depending on who you play and how many games you play and all that kind of stuff. And oftentimes it is not reflective of the reality of the situation. And that, I think, is what frustrates people at times. However, I can remember when the United States crept up into the top 10, and we were the first one to trumpet the fact that we were in FIFA's top 10. So it shouldn't be used as a definitive type of gauge of where you are. But look, if the U.S. is in the top 10, it's not just by some sort of hocus pocus or magic. They have done something in order to qualify, in order for that calculation to put them into the top 10. And I think for a team like the U.S., yeah, it is worthy of pointing to, but it's not everything. And it should be noted right now, if people are wondering, right now in the FIFA the FIFA rankings, the US from a men's perspective is at number 22. Just for some perspective, Wales, who we just played, is at 20. Senegal is at 21. Ukraine is at 23. Those are some teams that are surrounding us right now. When it comes to the women, it should come as no surprise that the U.S. Women's national team is number one in the rankings. And I don't think anybody, regardless of what calculation that you use, would quibble with that.
Just a little history here. The World Cup seeding process used to be akin to the NCAA's tournament selection process, in which there was a committee and a bunch of guys would get in the room and consider a lot of different factors and just kind of spit out a draw. And somewhere along the line, FIFA decided we got to make this more of an exact science. And so the FIFA rankings were introduced in late 1992. They held off for 94, but the first World Cup in which they factored in was 98. There were a few World Cups where it was a combination of your FIFA rankings and then your results in recent World Cups. And then starting in, I think, 2010, it's been all about the FIFA rankings. And given that it's pretty important now, they kind of feel some pressure to get it right and to figure out a formula that works and that everybody's going to be satisfied with. So they keep tweaking it every few years. In fact, after the 2018 World Cup, they did another tweak of the formula. But I don't know. They still can't get it to the point where everybody really feels good about it. There are these loopholes, and countries have figured out that if you don't play a lot of friendlies, it's to your benefit because your average points are better. Romania, I read, actually hired a rankings expert to be part of their backroom staff to sort of figure out ways to game the system. Poland have been accused of gaming the system. You know, they were a seed in 2018, which was controversial. Switzerland was a seed in 2014, which was controversial. You mentioned the U.S. That is one of the examples that's often cited. Prior to the 2006 World Cup, the U.S. shot up to 4th in the FIFA rankings, which was crazy. Norway at one point in the 90s got up to number 2. So there have been these head scratchers that have kind of exposed flaws in the system. So I don't know if they're ever going to get it totally right, where there's going to be like total acceptance on the part of the soccer fan, but it's worth trying to fine tune it, because if we're going to use it for World Cup seeding, then it is very important and something that you have to pay attention to for sure.
Look, everybody loves lists, so they're not going anywhere. They're always going to be around, and we will always argue and debate. And that is part of the reason why lists are put out, to have us debate that.
I'll tell you somebody that loves it. It is Rob Stone, you know, because he comes from that college football, college basketball background. So boy, whenever we cover international tournaments, he loves giving the seeding and referring to top 10 matchups. And so, I mean, he's very much into it.
All right, what else?
And we'll end on this. At Real Matt Sears, who was your best center back partner in your career?
Ooh, interesting. So from a national team perspective, I played with, the likes of obviously Marcelo Balboa, guys like John Doyle, guys like Mike Lapper, guys like Eddie Pope. I mean, look, I had the most success, and I think I'm most associated, and rightfully so, being next to Marcelo Balboa. And we both loved the physical nature of the game, both loved aerial nature of the game. I think he was more cultured, if you will, and probably a better player of the ball than I was. And so I'd probably have to say him. I also at times played in a back four and times that I played in a back three. So for example, at times with the national team, I was playing with guys like myself, Dooley, and Eddie Pope, for example. Eddie was wonderful. Eddie was probably better than all of us combined. And he was really, really fun to play. I played with him when he was a little younger. Then from a club perspective, you know, for example, when I was at the Galaxy, I was playing in a back three with let's see, who was I playing with? Tyrone Marshall and Danny Califf, and I was much more in a sweeper type of role. But yeah, I'd probably have to say my good friend Marcelo Balboa, with all of our hair and all of our 90s flair going on. And we would just take turns crunching and crushing players. And I had a blast playing with him. I loved his attitude and his approach to the game. You know, he knew what I could and couldn't do, and I knew what he could and couldn't do. And I think that's important in any type of pair. And so yeah, I place Marcelo Balboa.
Because I'm a dork, I just called up a random Padova lineup from the 94-95 season. Any of these names mean anything to you? Franco Gabrielli, Andrea Quicchi,
sure.
Michel Creek, David Baleri. Who would be a center back partner out of that group?
So let's see. Rosa would have been Quickie is interesting. He was one of these players, and every team and everybody I'm talking to right now knows this type of player. This player that if you saw him walking down the street, you'd never look at them and say, that's an athlete. That's a professional athlete. And yet they somehow had mastered the human body, or their human body, to be able to function on a professional level. And it didn't make sense. The eye test just didn't work with them. And yet when they got into the actual moment of the game, they were able to understand angles and they were understand how their body worked. And so he was one of those type of guys. When you talk about, I think you mentioned Gabrielli and Balleri, those were both outside backs. Gabrielli actually scored against Milan. Balleri went on to play for a bunch of different teams, including Parma. I'll never forget, I'll tell you this real quick story about Davide Balleri. When I first got to Italy, almost the first week, they were running us through preseason. And we would go on these ridiculously long and fast runs. Like it was sprint as long and fast as you possibly can. And this dude was like Frankie Haydick times 3. And then he would proceed to go to the side or go to the locker room and smoke through a pack of cigarettes. And it was, I mean, I don't know what was going on, but he was from a whole nother world when it came to the engine that he had, that he was putting nicotine and smoke down it. I don't know if they'd enhanced it or different, but it was incredibly demoralizing and deflating to not just be run off the whatever course we were doing by somebody, but then to have that person go and smoke up a storm. So, and we played mostly in a back. This was a situation where you called it a back 3, but it was really a back 5, especially because we defended so much. So anything else, Mossey?
That's it.
All right, we're going to take one more quick break. And when we come back, I will have for you my one for the road. Don't go away. Moving on. All right, we're back, Mossey. I'm going to give you my one for the road. And I thought about what I was going to talk about today. And look, I'm not here to preach. Oh, and I'm certainly not here to tell you what to do. But Mossey, you do know that I turned 50 in the year 2020. Strange year, but you know, it will always be the year that I turned 50. So this is my PSA for those of you out there. I did what many people that are listening have done, and it was my first time. I got a colonoscopy. You know what a colonoscopy is, Mossey?
I do.
Okay, so when you turn round about 50, sometimes it's before, sometimes it's after, sometimes it's right on. And obviously, I said I turned 50. They recommend that you get them. I do recommend that you get them, whether you're 50 or not. And certainly, if you have any type of history when it comes to family of problems, you probably want to get them even earlier. It on its surface appears daunting. I'm here to tell you that it's fine. Okay. The worst part of it is actually the prep. So without getting too graphic, because this is to a certain extent a family pod here, you got to flush out the system, Mossey, in order for this this situation to happen in this procedure. And it's a very short and simple type of procedure that happens. But for the previous 36 hours or so, you are not eating anything and you're drinking what amounts to a lot of Gatorade. And so at one point I had, what was it, like 64 ounces of Gatorade mixed with like 9 ounces of Miralax. And I'll tell you what, my friend, this stuff works, and it works fast, and it does exactly what it is intended to do. And it wasn't, it wasn't a panic type of situation, but you're definitely not leaving the house. You're in, and you're making sure everything's going on. Like I said, I don't want to get gross. Everything turned out fine. Everything seemed to look fine from my doctor's perspective, and hopefully, knock on wood, that stays for me and anybody else out there that goes through this. The actual procedure is very minimal. It's not painful. They put you out for the most part. And you wake up, I don't know, 20 minutes, 25 minutes later, and everything is done. Thank you to my anesthetist, Annie. She looked at me and said, "All right, you ready?" I said, "Annie, I'm going to fight this all away." And she laughed at me. And that's the last thing that I remember. And then I woke up and I talked to my good doctor, and everything looked fine. And we will go on and we will continue to do that. But I do, don't be afraid of it. It's part of, and it's not just part of 50-year-olds. It's part of a lot of people, and there's plenty of people that are younger that do it. And if you do it, I'm glad that you do it. You're helping to protect yourself, and obviously, if there is a problem, you want to get to it as quickly and as early as possible. But don't be intimidated. Don't fear the colonoscopy. It's got a very intimidating type of name, and and maybe they should call it something else. But everything's good, and I will go on, and I will know exactly what to expect when the next one comes around. So something for you to look forward to as you go forward, Mossey, and all of the young pups that are out there listening. But don't fear it, Mossey. Anything else that you would like to mention when it comes to the world of soccer, or just the world in general, before we go?
That is it.
That is it. All right. We thank you so much for listening, and for reviewing, and for downloading, and for subscribing, and for watching on all of the different channels out there. It warms the cockles of our heart that you spend a little bit of time with us each and every week. We hope you enjoy the podcast as much, and hopefully more than we enjoy it, because we have a great time doing it, and we will be doing it again next week. Same time, same place. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week. I hope everybody is staying safe and sane as we get through this nutty 2020 and on to 2021. All right, we'll talk again next week. Until then, size the day. You like that clip? Well, my State of the Union podcast drops every week. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.